Today, we're going to be talking about how checklists are used in research, but first, we're going to make a few announcements. And so, the first one, and you're probably aware of this at this point, but the Symbiota Support Hub continues to upgrade Symbiota portals that we manage to Symbiota 3.1. Some of the most recently upgraded portals include the B Library, CV Call, which used to be called CSV Call, so that's the portal for vertebrate collections, and the Consortium of Pacific Herbaria. And this will be coming to more portals soon in the future. And so we're just continually rolling this out. So if your portal, you'll most likely get an email about it in advance, just so you have a little bit of a heads up that this is coming. And if you haven't heard anything about Symbiota 3.1 yet, we have an extensive overview on our website. So at this link, which we can put in the chat, there's a blog post that outlines what is Symbiota 3.1, and then embedded in that blog post are the documentation. So written documentation as well as some extensive recordings just to help you learn how to use some of the new features in your portal as your portal is upgraded to 3.1 if it hasn't already been upgraded yet. And another reminder, I don't think we've mentioned this yet, but the Zoom link for this meeting will change in 2025. So we'll continue to use this link through this year, and then we will post a new link on our website at the same location that you found this link. I'll also put this in the chat in a few minutes. Just so be aware, coming January 2025, you will have to use you'll just have to basically re-register, and then that'll populate on your calendar the same way again in the future. But if come January, you're like, where's my Zoom link? It's because it's changed. So just a heads up, we'll also make a reminder announcement about this next month as well, just in case you forgot or not everybody gets the memo. And so with that, we don't have too many announcements today. This month, we'll be talking about how checklists are kind of used in a practical sense. So sort of maybe a little bit less technical demo, more of a show and tell type. And so most of today we'll be hearing from Jennifer Girón at the Museum of Texas Tech University. Jennifer is a curator there, as well as from Kenzie Anderson Bell, who's with the Utah Rare Plant Program at the Utah Department of Natural Resources. And so we have one user presenting how they use checklists from an entomologist perspective, and then another from the botanical perspective. So it's kind of a nice compare and contrast there. And so thank you both for agreeing to show our user base like how you use checklists. We're really excited to have you today. And before we get into the demos, I just want to mention that, or kind of as a reminder, we're not going to be showing you how to create checklists today because we have a lot of resources already created on that topic. And I can also put these links in the chat in a few minutes. In particular, I want to point out that there's a previous Symbiota support group on this topic, an extensive recording. And also in particular, Frank and Matt from the lichen and bryophyte portal communities did a demo for their portals, maybe not quite 6 months ago or approximately thereabouts. They did a very nice in-depth overview of like how they create checklists and use them in their portal communities. So if this is a topic that interests you and you really want to deep dive, we have many more resources in addition to this recording that we'll be posting on our website today. And then just another reminder, if you decide to start poking around in your portal because you want to kind of start playing around with checklists, you do need to have checklist permissions applied to your user account. Most people do, but if you realize you're not able to create them for some reason, you can email us and we can add those permissions to your user account, or you can ask an administrator in your portal. So somebody, say you're affiliated with a collection, you could ask the collection manager to sponsor you if you don't already have those permissions already, but most people should. But just a heads up, if you don't, we can help with that. And so with that, we'll start off with Jennifer. I'll stop sharing my screen and feel free to take it away.
All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming today to listen about checklists on Symbiota portals. The checklist I'm going to show off today is a checklist for a project that we have been developing in one particular locality in Texas, and it's built on ecdysis. So I will talk a little bit about the place where this checklist is, well, the specimens that are included in this checklist come from, and it's the Davis Mountains Preserve. So this is Sky Island in Texas, which goes from, I don't remember precisely the elevations, but most of Texas is very flat. So this particular locality has high elevation mountains and it has a broad range of habitats. And so plants and vertebrates have been well documented so far, but for the invertebrates, there's no comprehensive sampling to date, and we don't know what species live there, just of a few specific groups, but not for the entirety of different groups of arthropods present at this place. So back in 2021, a group of people got together and they decided that they wanted to start documenting the arthropods of this particular place. And so they started going there, sampling using different methods. Some of the specimens were deposited in personal collections or in other institutional collections. And when I joined the project last year, my commitment, because I still don't know a lot about the arthropods of Texas, my commitment was to make the data available for specimens through our in our collection. If they deposited specimens with us, I would make those specimens, that information available through our database. So I'm the curator of the invertebrate zoology collection at Texas Tech. And so because of that, we do have a profile in ecdysis. And here is us, the Museum of Texas Tech University. And so all our specimens are recorded there. Let me go back here. If I go here for more information, here you can see the information about our collection. We have so far this number of records. This percentage, 83%, are geo-referenced. A lot of the 50% of our specimens have images. And so for me, it was easy to commit that if I got specimens, I would be able to upload their data fairly quickly in comparison with other collections, like personal collections, for example. That data is probably not going to be available soon because personal collections, people would not necessarily have the time to go through this, whereas it's part of my job to have that information available online in a timely manner. And so with that, when I joined the project, they started sending me batches of specimens. And so those specimens are under this particular other catalog number, which is the accession number for TTU. But alongside that, we started creating a checklist for the project. So if we go to the homepage of ecdysis and we go to checklists, the checklist for this particular project is here, the Davis Mountain Preserve Arthropod Diversity Survey. And so far we have 187 families recorded and 1,034 species. So not for all of these species, we have specimens, we only have specimens for some. And so all the specimens that we have at the collection of Texas Tech, we have made them vouchers to this checklist. And the way that I can see that in the database or using this checklist is I can choose notes and vouchers, and I ask the system to build the list again. And so for all those taxa that I have representatives in the collection, you're going to see these records linked here. So for example, this particular specimen of this jewel beetle, if you click here, you're going to see the whole record. So we have this particular species recorded on this date for this particular locality that has, so we have all the data associated with that particular specimen. In addition, we also have photographs of the dorsal habitus and labels for every single specimen that I have recorded so far on this particular project. And so with that, we have about 225 specimens until now, but I do have a bunch that still need to be entered into the database. For other specimens, we do have, let me see. Besides the dorsal picture, we have detailed photographs in high resolution that could be used for publication or could be used for just illustrating the species, and so that someone could compare the morphology and make sure that they have the same, if they have the same species or not. So we are also building that photographic catalog associated with the checklist. Where is my checklist? Here, sorry. So all those 220 something specimens are linked here on the checklist. And the reason I like this too is because you can go, if I recover all the specimens from that accession, I can go and see a map, and it will show me the points where these specimens have been collected across the preserve. And you can see that there are several different localities where people have been collecting these specimens. And because of having photos associated with it and having that catalog, it is really nice to be able to show the preserve, like, hey, here is some advance in the catalog that we promised we were going to do when you gave us the permission to collect these specimens in the preserve. So this is a really good way for them also to be able to, since this is public and anyone can access it, I don't need to have credentials to actually see the checklist, but this public, they can check in every once in a while and keep track of progress that way. Not only because the number of species can increase, but also because of the number of voucher specimens also increasing. And so this also allows me, as the person in charge of the collection, to see which taxa I'm missing from this particular project. So for example, some of the beetles, some of these bees, we still don't have specimens from, and that might be the specimens I haven't processed yet. But it would also allow me to see all the coverage of the taxa that have been recorded from the preserve, at least since the time this project started. Another way to see this checklist would be, for example, as images. And so what this is going to do is the system is going to pull images for all the taxa that I have included in the checklist, and not necessarily only the taxa that I have uploaded photos of. But some of them I can recognize easily because they have the barcode label that these are the specimens that are deposited in the collection that I manage. So this is a different way of using the checklist to, for example, confirm species identifications if images are available. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to say about this checklist. Does anyone have questions about that?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I think it's cool that you use the checklist for reporting. Maybe I think that not everybody might think of using them that way, but I think that's a really interesting use case.
Yeah, and the administration of the preserve is really happy to see that they can actually see photos and they have all the records and that they can access that anytime without having to wait for a year until the report that is in a written piece of paper comes to them. So I think that's nice for them as well, to see that the permits that they give to people actually have some impact and some tangible results that they can see in the meantime before the project is finished.
Awesome. Well, if there are any immediate questions, there'll probably be more time to ask questions after Kenzie's presentation too. So I guess we can move on to the next demo.
All
Thank you
right.
so much, Jennifer.
All right, I think that's me. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Slideshow. Do we have the right screen sharing? Oh, there we go. We're seeing it. Okay. I just wanted to give a brief intro. My portion will be definitely kind of a couple steps back. My kind of intro to SignNet was volunteering at the Arizona State Herbarium um, in 2020, and I partnered with Dr. Les Landrum and helped write the How to Make Checklists in SignNet paper. So that's linked in some of the links that Lindsay dropped in the beginning, and I think Katie followed up with the publications. And I've also partnered with making kind of a video series on a newer kind of partnership called Nearby. And how I've been using these tools has been a little more casual for the last 3.5 years after my master's in interdisciplinary ecology. I've actually been guiding full time with REI. So I take people outdoors backpacking and camping, but my love has always been to kind of cure plant blindness and really bring people connected to this landscape. And I've built up a lot of my botanical knowledge through using tools like this, kind of a combination of tools. So um, I guess my audience would be a little more general of like, if you're interested in using these tools just for general building of knowledge, I do now have a technical position with the Utah Rare Plant team. And we conduct a lot of rare plant surveys for the Natural Heritage Program. Um, but I'm still using a lot of these tools. So um, this slide should show. Sorry, I can't like see that it's showing it, but it is showing the slides, right? Cool. Um, this is showing me guiding a couple of the places that I did get to guide over the last 3.5 years. Were places like Zion, Bryce, Yellowstone, and a couple other places around Arizona, like Aravaipa Canyon and Superstition Mountains. Really beautiful places. So you see that there's a couple of bullet points on here. A place like Zion National Park does have its own agency flora. I think Walter Fertig and another botanist did a pretty complete flora in the last decade. Um, but I'm not always just in the national park, right? So I'm also traveling across a lot of the landscapes in between. And so maybe I'm not interested in just the specific park. I'm interested in creating a geographic, point. So I wanted to kind of demonstrate just these three types of building checklists. I'm going to focus on Zion because I think it's interesting. I think we've talked in past Symbiota hubs that, not every specimen is georeferenced. So it's important not to just take, you know, everything in the georeferenced data that you collect as fact. But not everything is, specifically collected for that area. So maybe there's other search generations, like Washington County or Kane County, that can bring up other taxa that you might be missing in your checklists. So going to SignNet. This has always been the website I use, but it's across a lot of the different portals. They're very similar. the method that I go to is usually search collections. I usually keep all of the herbariums selected. And then actually starting with the agency flora, you can find a lot of national parks have been documented. So you can see Zion. This is where I was getting those details. So Walter Fertig and Alexander um, did this flora in 2009, and they found 1,066 total taxa. Um, but if I were to try and search it in another way, going back to that specimen search, all herbaria, let's try typing in Zion National Park. Whenever I do generate these checklists, I try and, of course, hit that taxonomic filter. And then I think what's helpful is when you convert it to this. So these are temporary checklists. These are things, because I'm often traveling across multiple different areas, I'm just kind of curious, for the weekend, like what are things that I'm likely to see? And I'll often use this kind of alongside, of course, you can't replace your botanical key, so I'll have my Utah flora with me. But sometimes it's just easier to, look back at this picture and be like, okay, I know that this is some type of pea. What types of peas do we have growing out here? So I can look through the search engine and just put the Fabaceae family in there. I know it's not an astragalus. And this looks like the one. And what's cool is Zion's got its own little sweet pea sub or variety. Um, so that is the locality search. We've already got our agency flora here. Let's try a bounding box and see how many of these specimens have been georeferenced in Zion National Park, roughly. So I usually when I'm going through an area, just going to create a rough point radius, but I think a bounding box is just as good. So zooming in. And I know that Zion, it doesn't have the boundaries specifically on here, but I know that I've driven through Zion enough to know it's roughly like Springdale over to Canaryville, kind of around towards Orderville. So
There might be a box that we're not seeing. There's probably a little pop-up, I'm guessing.
okay.
I'm guessing maybe because just your browser is shared as opposed to your whole screen, but it's okay. We can keep going too.
Oh, thank you for letting me know. Let's see if I can change that.
If you
Oh,
stop share and then reshare, but like instead of selecting browser, select the desktop option, that'll show any pop-ups that are coming up.
yeah. Okay, desktop. How are we looking?
Perfect. We can see it all now.
Amazing. Cool. So yeah, we'll go from Springdale. We'll get some of these good mountainous features in here all the way up to Canaryville and over through here towards the headwaters of the Narrows. And back over towards Rockville. Tap that. So this is likely, it's going to have a little bit of a wider range. So I would expect that the list would be a little bit larger. And yeah, so we have 1,576 taxa listed. And then once I bring that to a checklist and sort it brings us down to about 1,300. But yeah, so all of these tools are things that I use on a pretty regular basis. And honestly, I just like when I know that I'm going to an area, um, I'll go through the checklists and just, if there's an interesting family to me, or if I'll just kind of look through and try to familiarize myself with names and the images. I use a lot of these checklist tools just to kind of like prime myself for an area that I'm going to go that I'm new to, or that there's specific things I know might be in flower that I want to kind of have fresh on the mind. Let's see, and then the next slide. So moving on from building checklists, another tool that's been super cool, and I'm still trying to navigate how I'd like to use it specifically in this program, because I am working with a lot of sensitive species. They're often undercollected, or their data is obscured. I have some tools on my back end that I'm able to use, but I wanted to keep this kind of like for the public. So wanted to bring up nearby. And these photos were taken from a survey I got to do in August of a pretty cool plant. It has an interesting distribution. It kind of is sporadic across Nevada and Utah, just found kind of within these mountain ranges, but um, it grows in, I guess, you can't just like specifically say like, I know that this grows in a pinyon juniper pine forest, because it has a variety of habitats. So in boots on the ground work, we found it growing in rocky areas, in the riparian areas. We found it growing on almost barren, just total rock slabs. We found it growing mixed with serviceberry, gamble oak, mountain shrub communities. And then we also found it growing kind of just on poor, steep gravel areas. So since I'm pretty new to this job, I try to do my homework before I go out. So a couple of the things that I'll do is I will try out nearby. And in this instance, since it isn't a wildly rare plant, there are a decent amount of collections. So this is nearby. I think we probably have a link for y'all if you haven't tried it out. But what's cool is it shows you associated species found with your taxa. So my interest is Epilobium nevadense. This is Nevada willow herb. Unlike other willow herbs, it tends to, like I mentioned, grow in more kind of xeric conditions. So you aren't necessarily going to find it down where you would find most other willow herbs. I could select states, but I'll keep it broad because I don't know how many collections, we're going to find. Keep all of the parameters as is. You can change, if this is a really common species, you can change how many primary specimens you want found. It'll, either increase or decrease the amount of time you wait when you hit submit. And you can also increase or decrease the distance of sort of that radius. So if you're looking, for Natal's sunflower and you want to see what grows within 30 meters of it, you could enter 30 meters into this parameter. But we're going to keep it a little wider and hit submit. And it's normal for it to take a moment. We get this table here. So if you haven't run any of these searches, just to kind of familiarize you to what this table means. So basically, it's automatically sorted by how many of your target plant are found near these secondaries. So 8% of the time, epilobium is found near Ehrlichia nauseosa. You could switch it around to see how often is Ehrlichia nauseosa found near it, or I guess what is found near it mostly. And in this instance, Gutierrezia petridoria, or I think the common name of this is like goldenrod snakeweed, is often found near it. So I guess the way I look at this is having a little more background knowledge of certain plants' habits. So like Fenlara rupicola is Fendler's cliff bush. That's a cliff-loving plant. I think there was Peridoli congesta, also a cliff-loving plant. So I'm starting to build a pattern based off of this table. And I'm like, okay, this, if I didn't have a background knowledge of exactly what type of habitat this plant likes to grow in, I could infer from this table, I think it would likely grow in kind of rockier environments based on this. And then, sorry, you can also add images, which I think are pretty nice. It gives you a really great up close photo. So I think, as ecologists, we often think in plant communities and habitats. And so building this mental picture of what these habitats might look like, or kind of an inkling like, oh, I'm starting to see, a lot of cliff bush. Could this be where my target plant is? Are some of the ways that I have found this specific tool really useful. And then other things that I have used, just was going to give a shout out to, we have a kind of resource within the Utah DNR. And these often have great photos and a lot of the species ranks. And this is definitely better for like more obscure plants that I've been working with. I recognize it's a little niche for y'all, but if you're in Utah and you're looking for general info, description, and like known distributions of a lot of our plants, this resource has been really helpful for me to kind of gain knowledge on as well. And then we've discussed building checklists out of like collectors. And I guess one thing I wanted to add was like the way that I have used collectors in searches has actually been more on iNaturalist. Since, by the time a lot of the specimens kind of go through the herbarium process, they've got folks, there's like a little bit more quality control involved. But with iNaturalist, it's an amazing tool. I'm sure everyone here has a lot of opinions on it. And something I like to do within that specific tool is to search by collector. So I know like, okay, this is a botanist that I've been following, and I kind of trust their gauge when they're posting images. And that's just another thing I'll honestly do, like a, collector search and kind of see in that general area, okay, like have they collected the specific target that I'm going out for, or like what have they been seeing in this area to get better images of where I go beforehand. And I think that is all that I have to share. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to do my best to answer. Sure, Frank.
I just wanted to mention, I put this in the chat, but this tool nearby that Daryl Nufford developed at ASU is a super cool tool, and there's another one that looks at whole communities of plants, but both, unfortunately, they're on the local server at ASU. They only make a limited amount of use of the connection to the general Symbiota platforms yet. So Daryl has been working on trying to integrate them by using the new Symbiota API And when that happens, hopefully, then those tools might become a more integral part, because you could do all kinds of searches where you could do things across different groups of organisms. Right now, you could, for example, look which lichen grows in what kind of forest, or which kind of vascular plant, or you could have, like, once you get this across platforms, you could do something like there are certain tardigrades reported from bryophytes, etc. So, but just as a warning, that platform right now isn't quite fully integrated. It's a cool tool, and I think it should be at some point become integrated. But of course, there are priorities, I guess. So.
Thanks for sharing that, Frank. Yeah, I mean, you helped a lot on all of this too, so I should definitely give you a shout out for adding all of your knowledge.
Do we have any more questions for Jennifer or Kenzie, or just like random questions in general? I want to say thank you both for your demonstrations and for the bonus nearby, and just sort of a discussion of how you integrate your use of Symbiota checklists, in particular in with other resources too. That was kind of cool. Kenzie, thank you.
I see there's a question in the chat. Will one of you discuss how to link vouchers to checklist? And I think I can answer that. Let me share my screen again. So the way I link specimens to the checklist is, since I have a collection that I manage, let me go to the specimen. So for example, I'm going to look this specimen by its catalog number. And actually, I can just show you here in my occurrence editor. I have all the information on this specimen right here in the form. And whenever it loads, if it does,
Okay, we can be patient.
let me try that again. There. So here in these checklist voucher linkages, I can choose the checklist where this particular specimen can be linked. So let me see if I delete this just for demonstration's sake. Whenever I want to link something, it shows me the checklist that I have like manager privileges of. And so since this is a Davis Mountain specimen, I can choose that checklist and then link it. And that is how now this particular specimen is going to appear here on my checklist if I go back to the other display. See, what were you? Let me add amalides. So if I search that particular specimen, so here is the specimen that is linked onto that checklist. Does that answer the question?
I think so. Thank you, Jennifer. That was great. Well, if we don't have any other questions, we might end a little bit early so everybody gets a little more time back. Thank you again, Mackenzie and Jennifer, and everyone else who shared their knowledge about checklists today. This was great. Katie, do you have anything you want to say or announce, or we all good? I think we're good to wrap up.
There,
No, I
there,
just want to echo the thanks to Kenzie and Jennifer. Those were great.
there is another comment by Kirsten. Um, can you also show how to batch link the vouchers? And I don't know if I know how to do that.
I think Katie had a really great demonstration of that in her video. Is that linked, Katie?
It probably is, but I can probably pull something up and show that right now just to cover our bases.
So I shared online a fairly extensive tutorial on advanced checklist that we did for Ecuador, and you can look that up. That has all the details there as well.
Yeah, great point. So batch linking of things through checklists has to happen from the checklist interface, not from the specimen interface. And so there are some limitations to how you can do it. But I'll just go to this random checklist I have here. And if I go to the voucher administration here, I can go to, so there's several tabs here. One of them says non-vouchered taxa. So these are taxa in my list that have no voucher specimens associated with them. And so this is one place where I could add vouchers. So if I go to, um, let's see, new occurrences for all taxa, it might take a while because let's see, oh, I didn't show you this. So this might show up, this would show up if this is a brand new checklist. And what you have to do here is define what your search terms are going to be. The search terms that are going to define which taxa without vouchers show up or which vouchers, rather, are showing up. So the vouchers are those, in this case, of these taxa in the list that conform to these parameters. So in this case, the only parameter that I've included is that it is in San Mateo County. So when you're doing batch listing, you can't do based on catalog numbers and such. You can do like a specific collection and a specific taxon, locality, and collector, but you can't just say like, give me this list of catalog numbers and I'm going to batch link those. So that's one limitation. So if I save my search terms here, then this is going to give me a list of occurrences of this taxon or of all these taxa that are in San Mateo County. And so here it's showing me all of those specimen records. Not sure why we have some things we got to clean up there. But you could say like, okay, I know I want to add all of these vouchers. Then I could just scroll on down and click add vouchers. So that's for taxa that are already in your list but don't have vouchers. If you want to add things that are not taxa in your list already, but they do match the search terms that you've provided. So this is looking for all specimens, well, all taxa that exist within these search parameters. So within San Mateo County for this example. And then if you want to look at all of the vouchers for those, then you could change the display mode to batch linking, and it's going to show you here are, again, missing taxa. So these are taxa that are not yet in your list that are represented by one or more specimens. And so you could add one or many of these vouchers. And if I scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can either just like add the name itself to your checklist, or if you leave this unchecked, then it's adding both the new name and all of the vouchers that you have selected that are associated with that name. And again, this is only happening for the specimen record or the records and the names that you have checked on the left side. So then if I do this, submit vouchers, and I go back to my checklist, then I display my vouchers. I'll see any of the vouchers that I added. So hopefully that answers your question, Kirsten. And to get a more thorough run through, you can definitely look at those other tutorials that were linked in the chat. Any other questions?
I guess it sounds like we're good. I think we've got 10 minutes left, so we're probably good to end it here. Thank you everybody for coming, and we'll see you for our final Symbiota Support Group of the year in a month.
Thanks, Al.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.